going on, everybody? Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of the Welch Report with me, Jean-Luc Welch. Make some noise, clap it up, get excited. Wherever you are, in your car, on your job, at work, at home, don't matter. This is the hottest show in all the globe right here on YouTube and every podcasting platform, the Welch Report. And we got so much for you today with Tank knocking out Ghost Frank Martin, sending him to the Shadow Realm. Legitimately, my gosh, has he now officially cracked my top 10 in the pound for pound of all of boxing, as well as the Benavidez making his light heavyweight debut. The Mexican Monster, how did he perform in his win, and does this bode some concern for his competitiveness in the light heavyweight division, as well as the NBA Finals have commenced, and we have so much to talk about with the crowning champions of the Boston Celtics. That's right, Banner 18 has now been put up in Madison Square Garden officially. What does it mean for Jason Tatum? What does it mean for their chances to repeat? All of that and more is going to be talked about for this show. Thank you for tuning in and listening, and please leave a like on the video. Comment your thoughts and opinions, subscribe to the channel, and share the show with everybody that you know, so we can keep on building up this empire of a community together. That is right, we are on the road to potentially 1,500, and it's all thanks to you and your support to keep on sharing, keep on liking, keep on following, keep on giving this show some traction and the respect and the fun and the love that is just due and deserved, because we're trying to build something special out here, and it's all thanks to you and your support. But again, we got all this stuff out the way, but since we got to start this show off, we got to talk about boxing, and we got to step into the ring. That's right, ring the bell. Let's get it started. Round one of the show underway, talking about Frank Martin versus Gervonta Davis in an absolute demolition job by Gervonta Davis. And hey, again, as you know, we gonna give props where props is due. I called it right. Hey, come on now. I'm still on a roll when it comes to picking these rounds, and I called it within the round. Right on the dot in round 8, I said we would see Tank knock out Frank Martin. That's exactly what transpired, but it did not come without some real concern on the side of Tank Davis, and we'll break down the fight right here and now. As we saw in this fight, it was a tale of Frank versus Tank, Frank being the slick fighter and Tank being the aggressor. Would Tank be able to go and beat somebody who is indeed legitimately slick with his feet and his defense? It's the first real big defensive fighter that we've seen him fight against in his career, in terms of at the great and or elite level, depending on how you feel about Frank Martin as a fighter. And in this fight, it was boding true. He lost the first 4, in my opinion, the first 5 rounds of this fight, even with him trying to implement his game plan, like we've seen with Floyd Mayweather. And his student now taking that same approach throughout his entire career, sacrificed the early rounds in order to gain an advantage and get the kill shot later on in the fight. That's what Tank was doing, but even still, it was tougher than I've ever seen him, at least for me watching him fight against other competitors. Maybe the other toughest opponent was maybe Mario Barrios, due to the outright length and physical capabilities that Barrios was having against Tank Davis. And from a tactical perspective, Frank did everything right that you wanted to in this fight. He was being elusive. He wasn't standing in front of Tank. He was using the entirety of the ring and making Tank have to find him, instead of being the man to find Tank, instead of going after him, forcing Tank to come on the front foot and not be able to be a counterpuncher, but instead be somebody who has to be a stalk and walk type fighter. He is a leader, that, yes, but instead of getting caught with a shot while you're incoming, like we saw with Willie Romero, which compounds on the power that Tank already brings, make it so that with you and your athletic ability that Frank Martin has, with you and your legitimate strength, try to lull Tank into his own shot, so that you, being Frank, can be the guy that lands something deadly. And we were seeing that transpire in this fight. He was being able to make Tank get frustrated. He made Tank have to push the pace instead of being the man to make the pace. This was everything that you wanted from a fighter. in terms of fighting against Tank Davis, hugging on Tank when Tank was trying to get aggressive, when Tank closed in on the ropes to nullify the offensive ability that Tank would be able to bring when he got you cornered, turning him back around and using the middle of the ring again, using your jab to pop consistently as you regain space and regain momentum and regain control of, okay, I'm safe again, I'm safe again. That's what Tank did, or rather that's what Frank did, in this fight. It was great. The jab was active. He wasn't afraid, however, even in being defensive, to be willing to stand and throw combinations in front of Tank when Tank had his high guard up. Being willing to say, okay, if you're going to give me some real estate, I'll take advantage of it, only to a certain point, and then back off, be safe again. That was phenomenal. Again, the movement and the footwork of Frank Martin was giving him the best opportunity to win. It was allowing for him to get around the ring, get out of the way of shots, and continue to escape when he was at the ropes or in the corner, so that Tank and his effectiveness with him throwing with him throwing combos in the corners, combos in the ropes, were become ineffective. On top of when he did land in terms of Tank, Frank had a phenomenal chin. Frank was showing some toughness. Everybody thought he was going to get put out the second he got power put on him. He ate a good chunk of shots that did get through, even though, again, he was being very good defensively and was getting out the way. When he did connect in terms of Tank, Frank was able to eat them and keep on walking, keep on trucking, get out the way, and slightly turn his head. There was already contact, or if he wasn't able to do it, still just outright eat the shot and keep moving. This was a very impressive performance by Frank Martin. I told you all that Frank was going to be somebody who was more adept to be able to beat Tank than anybody's giving him credit for. There is a real fighter in Frank Martin. There is an active way to win that Frank Martin could achieve, and he was doing everything in the game plan that I broke down and just within his own power that would give him the best chance to win. His slickness made Tank frustrated. His footwork allowed him to use the whole ring and get out the way. His chin was more than anybody bargained for in terms of being able to take shots and be able to keep trucking. His confidence to be able to throw in the pocket with Tank was something that gave him some more points when in the early rounds, when Tank was still trying to figure him out. Again, the early rounds were the best rounds to give Frank Martin an opportunity to actively win, and his best chance, if he was going to use his power to get him out of there, to get him out of there. And he was landing through the guard of Tank. He was giving him some actively good shots. You saw the bruising, you saw the redness, you saw the blood coming on Tank's cheek. This wasn't just a pushover. No, it wasn't. This was a real fight. This was a real competitive war that we saw Frank go through. And it gave one of the best performances I've seen from him in his career. Absolutely. But what happened eventually? It was the fact that when it comes to Tank, you can't run forever. That's exactly what transpired. Because in the end, we saw him blow him out the water. And we saw him catch him with, I believe, an uppercut in the corner and then knock him out inevitably. And it all came from one thing that I consistently said. Frank is predictable. You can train Frank. You can get him to go where you want him to go if you get him to bite consistently. That's exactly what Tank did. Tank in his power alone would give anybody credence to flinch or all of a sudden react. But Frank is a very disciplined fighter. But when it came to Gervonta Davis, he was able to get Frank, as the rounds went on, not just to use up a bunch of energy to be able to wear the legs down of Frank Martin, constantly having to move and never actively being able to stand your ground for any given point in time. That drained the gas tank of Frank Martin in terms of having his defensive ability at the highest of his levels for what it was for the first 5 rounds of the fight. There was a slow tick down of his ability to move and get out the way. He started moving slower. His footwork became slower. It got easier and easier to get him to the ropes and keep him there, rather than him having the ability to escape on a consistent basis. And that, coupled with the fact that when Tank would start throwing, especially after round 5, we would then see him fake or then go and act like he was going to throw a shot and get him to bite. We saw it early on in the round when Tank was going in for a shot and faked it, and we saw Frank immediately react and get out the way. Now when Tank got him in the corner in the later rounds, instead of just going in and working or pausing, he would instead fake a shot, throw a shot, and then land afterwards. That's what he would do. Or excuse me, let me rephrase it. He would feint a shot And then after the reaction, then we're going to land. That's what inevitably caught him. And it was the tendency to duck down with his head movement when he gets cornered is the thing that got him. In the last round, I believe in round 8, what did Tank do? Tank got him in the corner again, walked him down, and was able to feint, got him to react, feinted, I believe 3 times before actively opening up. And then that's when the opening came for the uppercut and then the left hook that inevitably ended the show. And that left hook was outright. That left hook was lethal. That left hook was beautiful on the side of Tank. That was incredible. And it put Frank out. He could not get up, couldn't answer the count. It was over by the second he hit the ground. I knew he wasn't getting up. I knew it. He was working his butt off to try to force his body to do something that he couldn't do. It was an incredible effort by Frank Martin, an incredible fight all around. This gave Tank some real credibility in terms of his resume that he needed in order to get the trajectory of being an all-time great that we all know he can be. With a slick fighter in a fighting style we normally don't see him fighting against, who is indeed also physically fit and physically as athletic, closely athleticism as Tank is in terms of just explosiveness, strength, punch speed, and footwork. He's got that in terms of Frank Martin. And you go and you beat him like this. It's incredible. Going through adversity, going through having to really have to figure somebody out who is making you work, and then to inevitably still close the show is a phenomenal effort. Tank did exactly what he needed to do, and everything that we said he needed to do to actually make this the not comeback fight, but the dramatic finish to stamp his place in being one of the best in the world. This is exactly how you do it. This reminded everybody of who Tank was. Been out the ring for nearly over a year and now came back and he looked just as good. Just as great as we've ever seen him in his career. It is phenomenal effort. It's a phenomenal tactic. He walked him down. The pressure that he brought to Frank was too much for him to bear for the entirety of the fight. The constant ability to be able to stalk your opponent and understand that you will get to him eventually is exactly what Tank did in this fight. And it was an incredible display of another way that Tank can go and dominate and beat and win even against competition that is at an elevated level. This is what we wanted to see from Tank. This is a great reminder of how good and how dominant Tank Davis really is. Gervonta Davis is indeed, from a talent perspective, one of the best in the world. We have been saying this. We just want him to prove it against competition, or rather apropos competition that is relevant to him and his skill set and comparable to him and his skill set. This is exactly what we wanted to see. This is what we needed to see. This gave me real credence to give him the credit that I've been wanting to give him for a while. Now I can definitively say Tank is pound for pound top 10. I can say that now. With him being the WBA champion, at the lightweight division, with him, again, even though he was given the championship, now in his first defense against somebody who was, I deemed, a real dog, a real legitimate competitor, you then go and you beat him in a way that it looked like, again, this could be more trouble than even you thought. When I went to see the fight, people around me were all of a sudden getting antsy because it was like, wait a minute, Frank is giving more work than anybody expected. He's making life harder for Tank than anybody would have given him. We thought it was going to be over by now. But no, this was a real fight that Tank fans were getting a little bit concerned about by the halfway point of that fight. But even still, he went and closed the show. This was an apropos opponent. This was a fighter who was legit and was skillful and had a lot that could go wrong in terms of bringing a downward trend to the return of Tank Davis. And he still pulled it out in dominating fashion. This is a credence to say he is pound for pound top 10. I can officially say that. I'm happy to say that. We give credit where credit is due. And Tank earned this credit. Tank earned this ability. Tank earned for me the ability to say that he is top 10. But he still has to work if he wants to move up. He can be indeed top 3 in the world. It is possible that he could get up there. It is absolutely possible. He's still got work to do to get to that level. And if he doesn't do the right work, he's not going to get it from him. He's top 10 right now. Finally, his resume now is starting to look like what his resume is starting to look like what his ranking is deemed to be. Previously, it wasn't. Now, as a champion, beating a real contender, a legitimate contender. Give all the credit in the world. He deserves to be in the 10th spot for pound. Absolutely. And no doubt about it. Now, if he wants to work his way up, he's got to go through real fire. And that real fire is cleaning out his division at lightweight. That means going through Vasily Lomachenko. And that means going through Shakur Stevenson. He's got to do it. He's got to do it. He's got to do it. There's no way that I can move him up if he doesn't go through this. If he fights anybody else, there's going to be no point. Those are the last people in the division that are seen as really close to his competitive level. It has to be. This is an opportunity to clean out the division. Beat the two people, one of whom you yourself and your camp have said that you weren't ready for earlier in your career. When you actually were ready, ironically enough, you still didn't fight him. And now you're going at him. Yes, it's late. Yes, there's still going to be some stuff held against you because we wanted this fight a whole lot sooner. And this fight could have happened a whole lot sooner. But still, that says nonetheless of this is still an opportunity. If you beat both Shakur and Lomachenko, this could be what propels you into top 5. This could propel you into top 5 in the world, pound for pound. Your talent is already one of the best in the world. We're waiting for your accolades to catch up to it. Now your accolades are starting to happen. It's starting to transpire. Now that you're going and fighting people who are deemed as real competitors relative to your vast skill set. Some people that can really compete on your level, at least close to where you are as a fighter. Give you some real tough times. Real test of strength. Real test of mental fortitude. Real test of your ability to box and to fight. These people are what bring that to the table. These people are what bring out the best in you. And we can see if the best in you can beat the best of them. This is what we want to see. And with Lomachenko and Shakur, this is a prime opportunity. Do not take any other fight outside of these two. Do not take another fight outside of Shakur and Lomachenko. We cannot take another situation where no matter how great we see you as, you are still now at this stage in your career, 30-0, 28 KOs. You still are not fighting on a consistent basis the top level competition. It's no longer time for you to go on and fight people that are just, I can draw anybody. Hence, I can fight anybody. No. If you want the respect that you deemed as due, and you want your fanboys and all of your fans around the world, I'm a fan of you, myself included, to be right about who you are and what you are as a boxer in today's generation. You've got to prove it. And you got to show out and face the people that can make that statement a reality. That you are indeed the best in the world, as you so claim, and as others claim you as. Not me, but as others claim you as. That's what you got to live up to. You got to make those statements valid by putting on the right production, putting on the right show, putting on the performances against people that can actively perform as well. This is what we need to see. If you don't fight Lomachenko and you don't fight Shakur and you just go on like you've been going on and you dog down your competition again, hold it against you. Just like we did in the past. Just like we've been doing. We hold it against greatness. We hold greatness against greats if they don't achieve it. That's what we had to do. Because we held it against other people. We held that same standard versus Floyd Mayweather. Held it versus Manny Pacquiao. Held it versus Joe Louis, Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, Ali, George Foreman, Joe Frazier. We can keep going down the list. There's so many people, so many greats who have paved the way. Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, Marvin Hagler, marvelous Marvin Hagler, excuse me. All these fighters and more have done the work to make their legacy and to achieve their status in the annals of history. If you don't achieve that, no matter how great your talent is, you're not there. Some people are saying that you're the best, you're one of the greatest of all time. Still, that I don't see that as proven up until you achieve it. Because again, even when it came to Naoya Inoue, the talent was there. Inoue as a talent is one of the greatest I've ever seen. On par with people like Roy Jones Jr. in my estimation. In terms of this, it makes no sense how great he is from a talent perspective. It's insane. It's ridiculous. But that is still, if he didn't put on the performances and do the accolades against people that were deemed as truly great within his division, within his sect of his career, you would never hear me say that. You wouldn't. You would never hear me say that. John Boots Ennis is a phenomenal fighter. His skill set is incredibly unique, vastly unique, only attuned to or akin to somebody like a Terrence Crawford, with a little bit of Roy sprinkled in terms of just the raw athleticism and physical capability. I'm not comparing him to Roy. I'm saying the ability to do stuff in the ring. There is a sprinkle, a hint of, oh man, he was one of the people who did that also. Not comparing him to his greatness. But I'm saying he can be indeed great if he goes and achieves it. Now that he is a champion, now that he got a title from Terrence Crawford, who was, again, it was given to him, just like this WBA title was given to Gervonta Davis, he's got to prove it and go. If you can't get Terrence Crawford, fight active, fight more often, and fight the top of your division as it stands right now. And clean him out. You do that, we can start talking about you in a historical context as your talent deems worthy. Because if your talent is still there, but your accolades aren't, you don't get the grace to be able to say, yes, I'm still in that elite company. We can say you got the potential, absolutely, but you don't get the right to stamp your legacy as such, as an all-time great. You don't. You do not. I don't care how much history you watch. I don't care how much history I've watched. I don't care how little or much you know about the sport. The main baseline is your achievements and who you beat in the boxing realm is what garners you the ability to be seen as one of the greats. That's what epitomizes who you are and what you do and how great you were and how great we compare you to in the rest of boxing history. Tank, if you want to achieve that, that's what you got to do. You got to go and you got to fight these people. You've got to clean them out. And then you got to move up as well. Oh, this win doesn't change anything. It doesn't change a thing for me. You've moved up to 10th in my pound for pound list. Absolutely. Others have achieved more than you. Others have done more than you. Others have been more consistent than you. That is what you got to work against. That can all come to a head if you continue down this path of domination. This is what, but it has to be. It can't be a law period. It can't be you going and fighting B-list, C-list fighters. It can't be you fighting for anything less than unifying. Or if you're fighting to defend your title against somebody who is indeed about that life and legitimately seen as a threat to you. No longer can your career be seen as somebody who is just coasting by. Your name isn't going to get you the ability to be seen as an all-time great in the manner that you want to be seen as. Because your fans can say that, absolutely. Your critics can still say you're great, absolutely. But if you want to be seen in that historical greatness, you've got to prove it against the apropos competition, against the justified competition, against competitors and against fighters that also test you. Because if you don't, there's just going to be, he was great, don't get me wrong. Never truly fought anybody that was comparable to what he could do. Never did. And if he did fight him, he fought him years and years and years and years after they were out of their prime. We don't want that to happen with Lomachenko. No, we definitely don't want that to happen with Shakur Stevenson. And with you saying that time is winding up in your career and you don't want to be boxing forever, I respect it. There's no problem with that at all. I completely understand. This is a sport that is both fruitful and fruitless. It will give you everything and also take everything from you. It will take everything and give you nothing. Absolutely. This is a dangerous game. That anybody who chooses to play it is a warrior in the true sense of the word. However, does not change the fact at all. You still got to go through the fire. You have to. You got to go through the fire. If you want this, with the limited time that you say you have, you got to go through the work. You got to go do the work. You got to risk getting burned to achieve being able to come out as gold. If you don't go through the fire, we're just going to say, it's a great what if. We don't want a what if. We want a definitive. What were you when it's all said and done? Now is your opportunity to prove it with the track that you've gotten right now. This is a great start with Frank Martin. You continue this with Lomachenko and then Shakur Stevenson, and then moving up to 140 to fight Teofimo Lopez, Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia again. This would be the best opportunity for you to cement your legs. The start of the true cementing of Tank Davis. That's what this can be. But again, we still got more fights to cover on the show, like with David Benavidez in his return against Alexander Gvozdyk in a fight that he dominated in his debut at light heavyweight, going and beating by, I believe, a unanimous decision outright. Phenomenal performance, but it left some questions in the minds of a lot of boxing fans. This was a fight where everything about Gvozdyk came out true. His footwork is a lot slower. Everything about him is not the same as it was when he fought against Benavidez 3 years ago. However, hand speed was still there. The discipline was still there. The power was still there and was something to be a threat for David Benavidez. And when it came to a test of against a championship level competitor who's been at the higher stage against the best of that division, or some of the best of that division, what can you do if you're David Benavidez moving up in weight? And now from being a monster that dominated due to your size and length and power, being bigger and larger than life in the super middleweight division, going to light heavyweight in the land of also giants comparable to you, what can you do? And he showed he can do just about everything that he's been doing. But there is a diminished cost. And that cost is power. Power and stamina. In this fight, we saw David Benavidez, as we break it down fully, we saw him, again, dominate every single round. Came out strong like he always does every time he comes out to fight. This was a fighter who David Benavidez looked like at the start of the fight. He didn't miss a beat. Didn't miss a beat making weight. Looked as great as he's ever looked at 168, at 175 now. Combination with flowing, walking and stalking Gvozdyk down, putting on the pressure just like he did at super middleweight, going in and attacking the body constantly, throwing combinations, pushing Gvozdyk to the ropes and being able to tee off when necessary, constantly giving him something to worry about in terms of making Gvozdyk have to defend at all times of the fight, never letting up in his pressure, never letting up in his work rate, at least for the first 5 to 6 rounds, arguably the first 7. Everything looked like it was all hunky-dory. But then after round 5, we started to see that even with the good shots that Benavidez was landing, even with the powerful clean shots that we saw Benavidez landing, and the constant body work that he was indeed doing work on Gvozdyk with, wasn't being nearly as deflating and destructive as we've seen it at super middleweight. No. Gvozdyk was still standing tall. Gvozdyk was still throwing back. In fact, in the second half of the fight, we saw Gvozdyk giving a better fight than the first half. Getting more aggressive, getting more dangerous, being somebody who was throwing his own combinations down, who was giving fire back to David Benavidez. And by the end of the round, was actually pushing Benavidez to the ropes at one point, after being dominated and being pressured all fight long. And when I say dominated, I'm saying dominated in the sense of Benavidez controlled the fight and was winning the fight outright. Still didn't change the fact that there was a level of concern of he's doing all of this work at an incredibly high rate, landing 50% of all of his shots. I believe 50% of his power shots. And if not all of his shots outright. And still, not only is Gvozdyk up, but even when he was landing clean shots that normally would have spelled the beginning of the end for every other opponent that he's faced, Gvozdyk still is here looking like he's still got a whole lot in the tank, a whole lot left. Face wasn't cut up or bruised. Swelling wasn't nearly as much. The body attack of Benavidez wasn't taking nearly as much out of Gvozdyk as we all thought it would. The pressure and constant flurries, absolutely. But there was still some concern that the destructive power and ability of Benavidez, now moving up to light heavyweight, could be something that could get disavowed, could get diminished severely. And that's with any fighter moving up in weight. This is the risk that you take. What was working then may not work to nearly the effectiveness now because of the added durability and outright mass that you're now going up against. That's what Benavidez faced, and that's what we saw. Gvozdyk was able to take everything and last all 12 rounds. Even when it looked like he got stumbled, still was able to recover and keep on fighting. And the power of Benavidez now comes into question now at 175, at light heavyweight, at the weight class of Bivol and Benavidez. Does he have the pop to be able to win when it comes to fighting those elite caliber fighters? When it comes to fighting again, Bivol and Benavidez, depending on the winner. Because winning this fight, he is now in the interim titles, in line for the winner of whoever wins between Bivol and Benavidez later on this year. So he's going to get a shot, guaranteed, after this fight. Issue is, with this fight, the activity is there. And everything else is there. And there was so much that was good with this fight. In fact, before we break down the bad, let's break down the good. The good of this fight, he looks like a better all-around fighter. David Benavidez looks like a better all-around fighter than I've ever seen him. Against Gvozdyk, we saw him not only do everything that we know he can do, but also have a better deep understanding of being defensively sound. Not just blocking and using distance, but also using head movement, using his feet, slipping and moving and dodging. Actively using his upper body movement to get out the way. Pre-slipping. Already getting his head off the center line. Using a cross guard. In a mix of a cross guard and a high guard as he was closing the distance. When he was ducking down with that high guard, looked like somebody like Joe Frazier back in the day. Georgie Joe Walcott's back in the day. Archie Moore back in the day. This looked like a level of old school movement, activity, and outright offensive and defensive combined abilities. This was phenomenal. I love this. I truly do. This was great. Understanding that the power was going to be more up here than it was at super middleweight, we saw more defensive tools in his tool belt. A better, well-rounded fighter as a whole in Benavidez is what we witnessed on Saturday. Absolutely. The problem is, with all of that being said, with everything that he did great, the concern at this weight class is you gassed out. Later on in the fight, we saw that high work weight start to wane, start to go down. By the end of the fight, we were saying, hey, the normal high work rate that you have wasn't there tonight, was it? No, it wasn't. We saw him get gassed. We saw him start to, even though he was willing to throw still, we saw the combinations get slower and slower. More willingness to let Gvozdyk be the man to lead the show, lead the fight as the rounds went on after the halfway point. We saw a Benavidez that we normally don't see at all. We saw a more defensive Benavidez, not in terms of defensiveness to close the distance, but defensiveness to catch his breath. True defensiveness. Trying to not get hit while he's trying to recover. Trying to get some stamina back in him. Trying to get some wind back in his sails. This is the Benavidez we were uncommonly seeing. We've never seen this from Benavidez before. Due to the added weight that you're fighting it and the added durability that you're facing up against. You got to put a lot more work out. It's a lot more effort. Yes, it is. It's like heavyweight is a monster. The reason why Canelo couldn't do any damage to Bivol outside of his arms, though Canelo is incredibly strong. Reason why he got gassed at light heavyweight, like we saw with Benavidez. However, even though we saw some things that are a problem that he needs to work on, like his stamina, and like somehow the ability to not only get adjusted to the weight class, but adding more power to his punches somehow at this weight class, even though he came in at 189, close to 200 pounds. This is a situation where he still, with everything that I said about him, in the struggles of this fight, though it was still a dominating performance, and I'm glad we got to see it, still handled himself better than what we saw Canelo do versus Bivol. He did. Still handled himself leagues better than what we saw Canelo do versus Bivol. Absolutely. This was a fight where you can argue it was close to the dominance that we saw Canelo do against Sergey Kovalev in the first time Canelo went up to light heavyweight. Again, it ended in more dominant fashion, ended in KO. I'm not saying it was a better performance. No. Canelo's first stint at light heavyweight was indeed better. But this was a fight that, in terms of the first initiation of the weight class against somebody who's been close to fighting at the highest level, or faced off against somebody who is incredibly tough, incredibly durable, still had his chin, still had the majority of his fundamental ability outside of his speed, which again went away because of his age. He still showed that there is growth, that if he stays, and I hope he does, he could still be a real danger to a lot of people. He can. Because even when he did eat shots in this fight, even when he was tired, still he was able to walk through them and still be dominant. There was a lot of good in this fight, more than bad. There was a lot of great things in this fight, more than stuff that we take away from to be concerned about. Though there are things to be concerned about with his trek to becoming potentially an undisputed champion in a new weight class. Within 2 fights, potentially. Me personally, the best route I would take, have Benavidez take another fight at light heavyweight against a lesser opponent to be able to continue to get acclimated to the weight class. And then, after that, now go fight for the title when you get your opportunity. Because you still got some time between this fight, the undisputed fight between Bivol and Benavidez, and then your actual fight when you get called up as a mandatory. You still have an opportunity and some time to get another fight in. And we love fighters who are active. This is a great opportunity for you to get more acclimated, adjust better, and get more comfortable so that when you do get an opportunity to face the best of the best, whether it's Bivol or Benavidez, now you're better and well equipped to be able to compete and do what you do best, which is come and fight and destroy. And against other fellow destroyers, you can show that you belong. It was a good performance that showed me he has stuff to work on with the stamina and being more acclimated to the weight class and the durability that this weight class brings. But the overall fight that I saw from Benavidez, this is a better fighter. This is a better fighter in my estimation. This is a better fighter than I've seen from him because he used more tools to be able to win this fight. Wasn't just outright seek and destroy, walking down destruction. It was systematic, it was direct, it was intentional, and it was all still educated. Everything was still purposely done without forgetting the basics of what needs to be done. The defense always showed up, even when he was tired, still consistently trying to move his head, still consistently being ready to defend and block, while still walking forward, never being defensively unsound in his remembering of what he needs to do to keep not only his opponent off guard, but to keep himself safe. Never letting himself be a standing target. Never letting himself be somebody who, in your dominating attack, is still open to counters on a consistent basis. When you take chances, you understand how to recover and how to defend with your own abilities. When you take those chances, so you minimize the ability to get caught clean. He was doing that. We saw the thinking wheels turning inside of Benavidez. This is great. I love that we saw this from Benavidez. This is the fighter that I want to see face off against Canelo. This is the fighter I want to see go against people like Bivol and Benavidez. And before we switch gears, specifically with Canelo, though we know he's moved on, he did say that he is able to make 168 again if a Canelo fight did happen. Understand, leave the door open, though you know you're making your own legacy. But when it comes to Canelo, I keep on saying, if Canelo doesn't fight him now, he will never be able to beat him, in my estimation. The more and more Canelo doesn't fight Benavidez, doesn't take the open challenge, doesn't fight him at his current state, the more we keep seeing Benavidez improve and get better and better and better, like we saw in this fight. I saw him get better. I saw him use more. I saw him evolve. And even with the stuff that still needs to be worked on, again, stamina and the ability to generate power at this level of weight class, at light heavyweight, there is a better fighter in Benavidez than we saw before, even against Bubri Andre. And we saw this growth as time kept going on. against Caleb Plant, against Andre, against now Gvozdyk. Every time we've seen more and more and more, there's a new layer to his game. People are blinded by the destruction. Distance management with Caleb Plant and being able to control the inside in infight. Andre, the ability to, against somebody who is incredibly slick and awkward, time the shots, be defensive in your own right, and again, go and seek and destroy while being smart and educated. Now against Gvozdyk, against somebody who is the most durable opponent you've ever faced, who has power of his own, who wasn't succumbing to the outright onslaught of punches that you were doing that was making everybody else fall. Still, we saw mental fortitude, not giving up, your main form of attack, not going away from what worked. We saw you test out and utilize different tactics as the fight went on. We saw you be able to take and eat shots in as well for almost the entirety of the fight. Be defensively sound and utilizing more head movement, utilizing multiple styles of guard, utilizing feints, utilizing deceptive strategies to make it so that you are hard to hit and you are hard to read. You keep on improving if you're watching David Benavidez. Canelo, if you don't take this fight sooner rather than later, more and more we're going to be saying you're not going to be able to win. You're not. More and more people are going to be saying you're not going to be able to have the ability to do it. You're just not. You're just not. With the amount of volume and, again, now shown to be able to take punches at that level of weight class, at light heavyweight. Took some of those clean and still was able to keep on trucking and walking. We see now Benavidez is somebody who, if this keeps going up, Canelo's not going to be able to beat him. I don't think he's going to be able to beat him. If they do ever fight, Canelo's not going to be able to beat him if he keeps on this trajectory. And the definitive trajectory of Canelo won't beat Benavidez, when I say that, that time is coming sooner rather than later. I've been saying this for over a year and a half. Now it's starting to draw closer and closer to me saying and siding with Benavidez as a man to beat Canelo. Whether it's at 175 or at 168. Either way, with how I keep seeing him improve, both incrementally and in drastic changes, it's looking more and more like Benavidez is turning into the better fighter. Though we know what Canelo is as a boxer, he's phenomenal. Yes, absolutely. We're not taking anything away from him. This is not disrespect, but this is something I've been saying for over a year. If Canelo does not fight him now, he won't be able to beat him if he keeps on waiting. Because Benavidez is closer and closer to hitting the best Benavidez that we'll ever see. And by that time, Canelo's going to be out of his prime. And if that happens, there's no way he can beat him, in my estimation. There's no way he can beat him if he keeps on waiting. Fights him now, got a shot. Absolutely. And even now, I would say it's 50-50 with slightly favoring Canelo. Slightly favoring Canelo. But brother, this goes on another couple months, potentially a year. And there's no way. There's no way I can say that he can definitively win. And I would have to say Benavidez will be the man to beat Canelo if they faced off against each other. But we still got so much to talk about in this show, as we have Liam Parle, who upsets Sabril Matias in a shocking decision win against the man who was seen as, in my opinion, the most dangerous fighter at 140. Now that this has happened, we have some real dilemmas against a man who was supposed to be one of the best in the division. And of course, his stock has now dropped. His rankings in the 140-pound division have now dropped. Is he indeed a fraud with this loss? And we have to say no, he's not a fraud. Let's pump the brakes now. We understand that this is a brother who is supposed to be the most dangerous man at 140, that was supposed to shake up everybody in the division. His power alone and his constant work rate and stamina was supposed to be something that made everybody fearful of this man, and understandably so. It's a brother who made 5 people quit consecutively, breaking Lomachenko's record of 4 in his prime. We saw this man, again, become a champion, and outside of Teofimo Lopez, nobody else is really calling this man out. He's, sadly, killed somebody in the ring. We know this. Maxim Dadashev, who's our ultimate warrior. We remember this. We covered this. He's not a fluke. No. It's still, his talent comes into question after this loss, but he's not a fluke. Understand. We've seen him lose before. Earlier in his career, it was a closer affair than this one in my estimation, but still, we saw him lose in the past. And when he rematched him, he knocked him out. That's where the barometer really lies with Subriel Matias. I've always said he's not the best. I always said he's not the best at 140. Never said he was the best at 140. I said he was the third best in the division at that point in time when I made the video, which you can go back and look at. Absolutely. On this channel. We've talked about this man. His talent wasn't the best in the world. Nor was it the best in the division. But the potential of what he could do to the division was indeed real and was absolutely a threat to everybody. Everybody that had a title or who was a contender. And still to this day, that is still true. It just has the bold truth with his track record of the past. And that track record is, when he's lost it before, he's knocked his opponent out the next time they meet up against each other. We've seen other greats go and beat their opponents the next time they rematched them. We've seen this. We know this to be true. I'm not comparing him to these greats, but we saw Ali in his prime rematch and beat every opponent that beat him when he was at his best before Parkinson's kicked in later on in his career. We saw it. Shakur Robinson, 140 plus in a row, I believe, lost once, avenged that loss, and then 180 in a before losing again, and then rematched and won and beat that opponent. We know this. We've seen fighters of the past go, fight, lose, rematch, and overcome. We know this. I'm not comparing Subriel to those greats. I'm saying because of that, we didn't just berate them or kill them because of one loss. No, we don't do that. We don't do that at all. What makes you great is how you come back. And if we see Subriel, based on his track record, come back and destroy Pearl like we saw him do against his other opponents who beat him, then hey, he's still the Subriel Matias that we know and that we all see as one of the biggest threats in the division. It is not a fluke how good he is. If he loses again, however, now we have to ask the real question, okay, did we overestimate him? Because even based on his own history, he's not even living up to it. Based on his own destructive history of when somebody did manage to beat him, he still wasn't able to live up to that same moniker. We understand that his talent isn't the greatest. We've established it. We've never overhyped his talent. We've hyped up his power, his game-changing power that seemingly was able to cover up all of his other lack of substantial elite talent in terms of a boxing sense. Because his ability to walk, stalk, be a tank, absorb punishment, and give it out, and eventually break you down and wear you down to where you have to submit, beat you into submission. That's what he did to all of his opponents. And if in this rematch, when they do rematch, because he's vowed himself that he'll knock him out next time he fights him. If Paro and Matias fight against each other again, and they go and he knocks him out, then it's the same Subriel. It's still one of the biggest threats. He's living up to his track record. If you beat him, he will evolve, he will come back, and he will then come to seek and destroy. And you'll see it in this game, and you'll see it in his performance, how he's gotten better. If he loses, however, now we're having a completely different conversation. Now we have to say, hey, maybe we did overestimate you. Maybe it is a fluke that you are as good as we've seen you as. Maybe the opposition lied about what you were as a fighter. And maybe as a threat to a division, you weren't nearly as big of a threat as we posed you to be. That is what your power is undeniable. But now your boxing ability can no longer make up for the lack, or your power, can no longer make up for the lack of boxing ability that we see on display, with you being outboxed by somebody who was, for the most part, under the radar for the majority of us as boxing fans. Now, he took your spot, he took your title. When you come back and face him, if you're not different, then we have to talk about you in a different light. But if you are different, and you prove that your track record is what it is, that you've been and always will improve after your first loss to an opponent, and you won't make the same mistakes again, then we can talk about you like we want to talk about you, as still the destructive force who is deemed as one of the biggest threats in the division, who will be a terminating force, because when he does lose, he will adapt and come back bigger, stronger, and better than before. But that's if you produce in your rematch. If you don't, then we hold you to it. You didn't produce, you didn't perform, and you are, to a degree, we overhyped by us, by me. And I'll be the first one to say it, no problem at all. Depends on what you do in this next fight. That's going to give you real credence as to where I hold you in my esteem as a real contender in the super lightweight division. But again, now that we've talked about all that, we got to talk about the world of the NBA as we transition to basketball, as we have a new NBA champion in the form of the Boston Celtics, who have now taken hold of that brass ring and achieved what we've been saying they can achieve for the last 5 years, ever since LeBron left from the East. You can win a title. Boston finally did it. Banner 18 has been hung in Madison Square Garden, in TD Garden. My apologies, not Madison Square Garden. That is where the Knicks play. And who cares? Well, we all care about the Knicks, but they suck. I'm kidding. They don't suck. The Knicks are good. Knicks are great. No problem there. But in TD Garden, we can now see that another banner has been hoisted into the rafters of Boston as Banner 18 has been hung. The most championships in NBA history have been achieved by the Boston Celtics. And finally, good God, it took long enough. They achieved their potential. Boston achieved what their potential could be with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They finally got over the hump and were finally able to close the show on a team that they were better than. We hadn't seen you do it on a consistent basis when you had the upper hand in all-around talent. If it was Miami in 2023, when you lost them in 7 games, when you should have beat them, when you were the better team. In the bubble, same situation. They got you. This is exactly what we've been waiting on. Can you achieve what you should achieve when we know you are better than everybody else around you? Can you close the show? Finally close the show. And this is a weight off of Jason Tatum's back, as we have been waiting for this man to come into his own. We have been waiting for him to finally achieve the potential as a leader, as a player, that we've been seeing in him. All this stuff, whether it's the memes about him being 21 years old or 19, whatever the age was, whether it was the semblance of greatness and the semblance of Kobe that we saw from him in his game and how he played, how he carried, or not how he carried himself, but in terms of how he respected the game and how he approached the game based on the influence of Kobe Bryant. All this stuff was good ground for a real star to grow. We've been waiting on it, looking for it, waiting for it to happen, waiting for it to solidify. Now we can finally say he did it. He truly did it. This is great. But that still doesn't change the fact there are still questions that need to be asked about this team, specifically with Jason Tatum. Because even in this win, while the weight is gone, that he won a championship, still did not win Finals MVP. And again, like I have been saying constantly about Jason Tatum, when stuff gets deeper and deeper in the playoffs, he is never the guy to be the leader on the squad. And it has been Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown, with that big contract that he's got, I believe one of the biggest in the league, if not in history, has been, when the bigger moments come, has been the guys been playing up to it. This is what we've been seeing from Jaylen Brown and not from Jason Tatum. The problem with Jason Tatum, here's the thing. Here's the problem that I had with Jason Tatum in this series, even though he won. And why he's not in my top 10 of NBA players due to this performance. It's because of the fact that we have been routinely saying that the playoffs are the biggest thing that matters. How you produce individually, from my specific criteria, has been what gets you the moniker of being great or not. Because your team can suck, but you can put up incredible numbers and do everything you can. I'm not going to diminish what you do if you lose just because you lost. If you indeed played phenomenal, that would never change. And since that's the case, when it came to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, we were looking at Jason Tatum. I was looking at Jason Tatum and saying, specifically with your production, you are not showing up. You're just not. And the fact that you have, again, you adapted. You became the playmaker for your squad. You became the facilitator. That's great. Still, as what your role is on this team and what your moniker as a superstar is that you yourself earned, you did not play up to par. You are not supposed to be the facilitator. You're supposed to be the scorer, the leading man that gets buckets and the most unstoppable force on your team when it came to leading your squad to victory on the offensive end. It should not be that we continually saw you get outplayed and have to adapt your game. We're not diminishing that adapting your game isn't great. You played for the betterment of the team. Phenomenal. Doesn't change the fact that if we hold you to the standard and then you play below that standard and are forced to do something else because your own standard isn't working for you, that is a problem. It is. We've done that for everybody else. We have. We absolutely have. It makes no sense to all of a sudden then say, he played well. Look at him, he played great. No, he did not play great. He put up 20 points, shot 36% from the field, shot nearly sub 25% from three. You can look it up for yourself, please. But I know it was sub 30% from three outright for the majority of this series. The best game that he had was, I think, this last game. Yeah, what 31? 29, 31 just about in this game. And I think 30-something in the other game, potentially. But outside of that, it's been bad. It was a situation where you got carried by your collective talent around you and by your running mate that's supposed to be your running mate, not the man running the show. It's just a fact of the matter. This is not like with Jaylen Brown winning MVP, this isn't like with Iguodala holding LeBron to 35, 11, and 8 on the series. That's why he got Finals MVP, which was ludicrous still. Steph Curry should have gotten that MVP in my estimation, but that still doesn't. This is not the same. It's not a robbery. It's not a robbery of a award that you deserved. You just didn't get. You got outplayed consistently. Were outdone by your running mate. Again, what did I say at the start of this entire series? If we see that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are putting up comparable numbers again this series against a team that you should be able to individually dominate the same way you were doing it in the regular season. There's no way that they had any talent that could guard you as a scorer, as your main opportunity in terms of why you are a superstar. What made you how we see you now? What got you the respect and got you the cachet and got you the title of superstar that we christened you with 4 years ago? This is what you didn't play like that. You underperformed individually. And you played up to the level of Jaylen Brown, not overarchingly the best player in your team. And Jaylen Brown, even playing up to his level, you got outplayed by Jaylen Brown consistently. It is a question that still begs a real concern for everybody because they did win a title. We don't take it away from them. They won a title. Banner 18 is up in the Garden. It's up in TD Garden. It is up, and Banner 18 is cemented in the Boston Celtics regime. That won't change. Jason Tatum is a champion. Jason Tatum got over the hump. He did learn to adapt and make his team better, even in ways that he's normally not able to, or normally isn't in charge of. Great, we love to see that. That doesn't change the fact that this begs the question of next season. Though they're still incredibly well built, absolutely, they're still a phenomenal team. How are they going to be able to repeat? Because right now, right as of today, Tatum's eligible for, I believe, a 5-year or 3-year, $315 million deal, maybe even more. A max to the full extent of the work. Potentially, I believe we're making the highest paid player in NBA history. The biggest contract we've ever seen. That is what the Celtics are working with. They just gave the other biggest contract in NBA history to Jaylen Brown. So now you're working with that kind of money that they're both eligible for. Or one's already got. The other one now, Jason Tatum, is eligible for. Are you going to be able to pay the rest of the squad to be able to keep them around? And even if they do stay, and they do try to repeat, because again, I'm not as big on the whole business side of the matter. They could have locked other people up for a long time, understandable. Even still, whatever the case may be, when it comes to this Boston squad, strictly off of production, let alone forget money, production, individual talent, will you be able to beat a healthy Eastern Conference? A healthy Joel Embiid on the Sixers, a healthy Jimmy Butler, and the Miami Heat, who again gave you trouble just the year before. Are you going to be able to beat and run through this gauntlet again against a fully healthy squad? A fully healthy regime of talent all up and down the East Coast or Eastern Conference, but you get what I'm saying? There's a question of, was this run a run of happenstance? A run of, oh, it just so happened Jimmy Butler was hurt. It just so happened that in Indiana, Halliburton got hurt. It just so happened that everybody that you faced in the playoffs up into the finals, somebody got injured in one form or fashion. Some key piece, some core part of the opposition got hurt and wasn't able to play. It was happenstance. It was ironic. It was very much, very much, oh my gosh, coincidental. Suspiciously coincidental, but still just coincidental nonetheless. Now that we've gotten this done, you won. You did it. But you didn't face against the healthiest of opposition. We can't take that away because you play who you play. You play who you play. We're not taking away this title. We're questioning next year when we see this most likely miracle happenstances or this miracle of happenstances and coincidences that happened this year, most likely not happen again next year. Are you still going to be able to produce the same way? Especially when the playoffs roll around. And if we see again, Jason Tatum still not playing up to the caliber of his regular season production and playing down to the level of Jaylen Brown. It worked this time. Will it work against a healthy Jimmy Butler, who we've seen rock your world consistently when you play against him? Will it? That's the question. Let's say hypothetically we see next season Jaylen Brown is the man who folds. Now, if it's on Jason Tatum, nearly every time, Jason Tatum's never been the guy to show up and pull through. It just hasn't. We talked about it on this very show. We went over the instances. We went over how overtime came to be, how we nearly lost them overtime versus the Pacers in that series. This very finals, getting outplayed constantly. Last finals, getting outplayed constantly. These aren't just, we're not trying to nitpick and make it so that, we just hate Jason Tatum. No, we're not doing it. There is a real concern for somebody that we hold at this level of superstardom who is continually shrinking. And we're all just sitting back saying, well, he got a title. No, absolutely not. He's got to continue to perform every time he gets out on the floor. Having to accommodate and being thrown off your own individual game every time you get to the playoffs, that is a problem. That's a big problem. Nobody seems to be talking about that. He was forced to become a playmaker for the second time in his tenure in the finals against a team that should not be able to stop him. That's not okay. He got carried again as when he's supposed to be the best player on the floor. That is not okay. He was seen as the third best player on his team this year. June Holiday played better than him. Kristaps Porzingis played better than him. Jaylen Brown played better than him. Derek White, you could argue, played better than him. This is not okay, even in a championship winning year. Because we still hold individual production as a real means of a barometer of greatness. We have to do that. If we saw LeBron put up the same numbers that we saw Tatum put up this season, or this series, in the finals, and they won, and they got a title, we will be killing him to kingdom come. We will be saying, never bring, you're nowhere close to Kobe. let alone Michael Jordan, calling you a king and you getting outplayed by your subjects that are supposed to be playing, that you're supposed to be leading. You know, you're not a king, you're a court jester, because the way you played this was hysterical. You got carried. You aren't really great. You're not really good. You are not built for the moment. That's what we would be saying about LeBron. Not me, but that's what other people would be saying about LeBron. That's what the public would have been saying about LeBron if we saw that very thing happen. If we saw the same level of production by somebody like a LeBron, by somebody like a Kobe, by somebody like a Michael Jordan, who are all-time greats, that we're all-time, Larry Bird, John Havlicek, Bill Russell, we would not be giving just this credence of, he did it. Look at him. Oh, we're so happy you got the monkey out. No. You won. You did what you needed to do, which is phenomenal. But you still underperformed in your role as the best player on this team. That is not okay. You lose a level of stardom if you do that, let alone twice in a row. Once in a losing effort and another in a winning effort. Both times against teams that it would be different if it was a defensive squad that was supposed to, hey, we're built to stop you. We can stop you. We got the talent to be able to stop you. But none of these teams are built to stop Jason Tatum. And still, they stopped him individually. That is a problem. That is an outright problem. That is not the marker of a top 10 player. That is not the barometer of somebody who in the regular season we see dominating. In the postseason, we see him diminish. Multiple times that we can track. That is not okay. James Harden, we got on him about shrinking in the playoffs. We got to do the same thing with Jason Tatum. Though he won, that doesn't excuse anything. Again, we keep everything as it's supposed to be here. The discourse is still the discourse. This is the talks that we have to have when it comes to a player who is supposed to be great, who's supposed to be top 10 in the world, and isn't producing when the moments are biggest. This is a problem. They won't repeat if this is the same person. If we see again Jason Tatum playing below his level. And one injury on this Celtics squad that isn't Jason Tatum, this championship aspirations are up in smoke. Jrue Holiday gets injured next season, up in smoke. Jaylen Brown gets injured next season, up in smoke. Up in smoke. Even with as good as this team is. No. Just no. Yes, they were able to perform and produce this year. Again, everybody was hurt. Everybody was hurt. We don't take away the championship. We take away your production against talent that you should be better than. Is continually, especially in the finals, not up to par of somebody who we deem as one of the 10 best players in the world. One of the best players the best player on your team. Somebody who has the aspirations to potentially be a top 5 player in the world. As others say that you can be. If you don't play up to that level here, and only in the regular season, why are we all of a sudden having this as a discourse of, it's okay? It's not. It indeed is not. And it's a problem. He's a champion. He deserves it. He adapted and overcame. And we going to see if he can defend his title next year. But he got carried. Jason Tatum got carried in this Boston series by his incredible unit of talent and cohesion and chemistry. It's great. We love it. Again, that's what basketball's about. Some people compare it to the Spurs and how they play. Point being, individually, you're supposed to be better. And you weren't, which is a problem. Everybody got on me about saying that Jason Tatum continues to falter. And if he continued to falter again in the finals, even if he won, he would not be in my top 10. Well, now, exactly what I said happened. Exactly what I said could happen would happen. Exactly what I said could transpire with Jason Tatum. Shrinking again against a team that should not be able to stop him at all. Got stopped offensively from the biggest proponent that made him a superstar, which was his scoring. And he got destroyed in. Couldn't shoot 50% from the field. Couldn't shoot 40% from the field. Are you kidding me? As a volume scorer, as supposed to be one of the best scorers in the NBA, one of the most, when you want to, one of the most unstoppable scorers that we have in the NBA today, 3-level scorer on all different fronts, and you still are shooting this abysmal? You're playing offensively this abysmal? No. We're not gonna have some for thee, but not for me when it comes to how we judge players. No, we're not. You're not a top 10 player. You don't deserve to be seen as a top 10 player. Arguably, you don't deserve to be top 15 with how you perform. There's a real argument. You don't deserve to be top 15 with how you performed in this finals. And as a whole, in the playoffs, with Jaylen Brown leading your squad, being the man to outplay you every step of the way. No. If you can't play in the biggest moments, just like we hold other people accountable, gotta hold you the same way. And you didn't produce like you were supposed to as the best player on your team. You didn't get cold feet. You weren't trying to not step on toes. You weren't trying to say, ooh, maybe I should give me the green light so I can really play like I want to play. It wasn't that. You absolutely played abysmal in this finals performance, in this final series, when you shouldn't have. When this should have been your best series to date. Hence that, because of that, you are not a top 10 player. Plain and simple. You're not a top 10 player. Unless you prove it again in the playoffs that you are indeed built for the moment and can produce just like in the regular season, I'm not going to put you as top 10. Because if playoffs matter, it can't just be the end result only, though that is the ultimate goal. How you do when you get there is also something that needs to be taken into account. Your production. And you did not produce. Hence, I can't have you at that same caliber. And you're not top 10 in my eyes. Maybe you can get up there next season again. But right now, no, you're not. With all that being said, this has been another episode of the Welch Report with me, John Luke Welch. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the show. Again, please go on every podcasting platform, leave us 5-star ratings everywhere. And also, please leave a like on the video. Comment your thoughts and opinions. Subscribe to the channel and share the show with everybody that you know so we can keep on building up this empire together. That is right. We still got more to come as the weeks go on, and we will be right here for more action to talk about the happenings in the sports world. So please, be safe, be blessed. Everybody have a phenomenal week, and we'll be back for another episode real soon. Peace and love. We are out of here.